add my thanks to everyone who's thanking MCCPTA for hosting this forum, and it is good to be here with members of the County Council and Mr. Beach from the Executive's Office to hear about what we face as a school system and what you all as advocates do for our system. I want to go back to, I think, a point that Mr. Clark made when he was talking about some of the cuts that are in our current budget. And he alluded to the increased class size, as you all know, but in terms of all the position cuts that were made, we cut academic intervention teachers, counselors, staff development teachers, we cut middle school reform, we cut maintenance workers, we cut textbook supplies, we cut furniture and equipment, we cut special program teachers, we cut focus teachers, we cut reading initiative teachers, we cut paraeducators, we cut media assistants, we cut speech pathologists, we cut psychologists, we cut pupil personnel workers, and that's only some of the cuts. And then there were a lot more in terms of central office cuts and cuts that were made just in terms of our pre-funding for health benefits. But that list of cuts that I read came to around $30 to $40 million in cuts. I think part of the problem in our county is we have such a good system that we think that we can absorb these kind of cuts and it's not going to make any difference. And really, we are not going to know until the end of this year, what the impact of all these cuts are going to be on our system. So, as the superintendent's budget doesn't, it's really a same services budget. The maintenance of effort budget keeps everything pretty much as is. There are $6 million in central office cuts, but right now there are no proposals to cut these positions like these, which come out of the classroom, come out of the schoolhouse, and really directly impact the quality of the education that your children receive. I know that there are those that think that we can cut our way out of this by just making the cuts on the backs of our employees, by cutting central office to the bone, and that we're going to be able to get through this. But we don't really know yet what the magnitude is going to be. We've talked about, we could be looking at, $100 million, $150 million in terms, if the pensions come back, in terms of the cuts in state funding that will hit us. That could be anywhere from, if the governor says I'm going to cut education funding by 5%, that could be $25 million to MCPS. Pensions could be another $98 million to MCPS. And that's before we even get into what county government is claiming or saying that they won't be able to fund in terms of the additional funds that we are asking for from our county. So, my priority, and I'm not really sure, and I know that a lot of this is doom and gloom, but my priority is that we don't look back at the 2008, 2009, 2010 years as those were the good old days of MCPS, when it had a world-class school system that we were willing to pay for. Because I think that if we talk about cutting 50, 100, 150, 200 million from our budget, these kinds of, I know that MCCPTA's priorities is don't increase class size, and it's fine. I think I'll be guided by those priorities in terms of, those might be the last things that I'll be looking to do. But, we had community forums where they talked, folks talked about how great the system was and the things that they thought were important. And class size, no cuts to class size was important. Keeping our special programs, keeping our GT and funding for special education were all important priorities from the community. But, my fear is that we may be looking back, if on this time as the beginning of the end, I don't want to be too pessimistic, but I think we're in a period now. It's several years. It's not like even if we address the problems today, we know that next year it's going to, our enrollment is going up. It's not going down, so we will need more funding for increased enrollment. So, you know, my priority is trying to keep the system as whole as possible.
Thank you. Mr. Leventhal?
Hello, good to be here with you. I apologize for arriving late. I want to thank the advocacy. I want to thank the MCC PTA leaders for your advocacy. It's critically important. We're always glad to hear from you, and we try very, very hard to deliver the world-class first-rate educational system that we enjoy. I'm going to take just a minute to brag about my children. My son talked to me tonight. He's 15 years old. He's a sophomore at Blair High School. He's trying out for lacrosse and football. He apologized to me because he's currently getting A's in every course except pre-calculus. But he said, "But Dad, I've got 89.5% in pre-calculus, so I'm almost at an A." I sure didn't teach him pre-calculus. I don't know anything about pre-calculus. As a matter of fact, Montgomery County school teachers taught my children to tell time, taught them about the molecular table, taught them most of what they know. They learned something from their parents. But I'm deeply grateful to the Montgomery County Public Schools for what the public schools have done for my children. And I think about my children every day when I make decisions on the school budget. And I know that every council member feels the same as I do. We all, every one of us, either has now or has had children in the Montgomery County school system. So please understand, over the coming months, as you approach the county council, we are parents too, and we care every bit as much about maintaining the excellence of our school system. I'm sorry I didn't hear the remarks of my good friends on the Board of Education, and I understand that the Council Vice President, Laura Berchone, said he was gracious, and he always is, and I certainly want to acknowledge the tremendous leadership that our superintendent has delivered over the years. We have one of the best school systems in the United States, and we all deserve credit for that. Everyone in the room deserves credit for that, but certainly the superintendent deserves credit for that. We appreciate his service. Having said that, we are not going to fund his budget request because we don't have the money. And that's the reality. And we support our schools, and we are grateful for our school board, and we're grateful for all of you, and we're grateful for our superintendent. But if we were to provide the amount of dollars that Dr. Wiest has asked for within the budget that we project we're going to have, the amount of the total budget devoted to schools would rise from 57% this year of the total budget to 62.33% of the total budget. And for most of the time, I've been on the county council for 8 years, just like Nancy Florine has, the amount of the total county budget devoted to the schools has hovered around 53%. And this year it went up to 57%. And if we were to, I'm just repeating this, sorry, briefly, if we were to do what Dr. Wiest has asked us to do, it would go up to 62.33%. We just can't do that to our libraries, our police, our fire, our parks, health and human services, transportation, and the other services that students and parents rely on. As a matter of fact, our council staff has estimated that direct school support services funded by Montgomery County, not by NCPS, total $38 million in fiscal year 11. I'm talking about the educational facility officers, the school crossing guards, the school health nurses, linkages to learning, facilities, and other expenses that come out of the other 43% of the budget, not out of MCPS's budget. And those are just the real facts that we have to deal with. We aren't looking at providing less than the school superintendent asked for because we want to, but the reality is that's what's going to happen. Now, my only job is as a member of the Montgomery County Council, and I don't have another job. And I took 3 days of furloughs this year. All council members did. The council president makes a little more each year. The council presidency rotates. So the council president took 5 days of furloughs. You heard, of course, living in the county, the controversy over the ambulance fee. All county employees took at least 3 days of furloughs, except for school system employees who took no days of furloughs. If school system employees had taken 2 days of furloughs, less than any county employee, the ambulance fee discussion could have been moved. We never would have had that debate. We might have had it anyway because it's a good source of revenue. I still support the ambulance fee. But I got to tell you, I took 3 days of furloughs, and I am not minimizing sacrifice that all of us have made, but I am going to be very, very honest and straight with you. I did not notice it. I get my paycheck direct deposited in my account every 2 weeks. The money that I have is what I have available to pay my bills. I just honestly didn't feel it. It was a 3.8% cut in my pay. And I'm not minimizing sacrifice, but realistically, what is going to happen, I'm just cutting right to the chase here. I know everyone's anxious about time. Employees of Montgomery County in 2012 are going to take home less in their paychecks than they took home in 2011. That's the fact. That's what's going to happen. And that's how we're going to get through this. And the sacrifice can be absorbed. It's not easy. We wish we didn't have to do it, but it's what the private sector is doing. It's what state and local governments around the country are doing, and whether we do it through furloughs, whether we do it through a straight reduction in base salary, or whether we do it through a shift in the percentages that people pay in their health insurance premiums or their retirement contributions, the net effect is going to be the same. We're all going to take home less in our paychecks. County council members are going to take home less in our paychecks, and I believe it'll be all right. And I believe that's how we're going to get through this. And so, you know, stick with us. This is a great school system. We're grateful for everything you do, but let's try hard to be gracious to each other, to appreciate each other's service, and be realistic about what can and can't be absorbed. You know, a single-digit percentage point reduction in net take-home pay, I'm sorry about it, but it can be absorbed. It really can be. And that's what's going to happen, and that's how we're going to do
Thank you,
this.
Mr. Leventhal.